So welcome to today's Business Women Australia online Q&A. Our topic today is cyber safety, and I'm really excited to be doing this topic because it's so important for women all across Australia, no matter what kind of work you're in, whether or not you're a business owner, whether or not you're a manager, whether or not you're an employee. This is something that is very close to my heart, and I have a very interesting story to share with you all soon. About something that I'm learning a big lesson about myself. So just like to acknowledge this beautiful country in which we're all streaming in. We've got women from all around Australia that are a part of our community. And I would like to acknowledge the land in which we're meeting, being the traditional owners of this country. They have celebrated, danced, and lived around the water of Mandurah. Now, I've said this at the last one, I need to do a bit of research around this. I'm so used to acknowledging the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, but I know there's a different group in this area. If anyone knows who that is, please pop it in the chat box. I know that there's some people from Mandurah that are listening on call. So let me know. I'd just like to pay my respects to all elders, past, present, and those emerging, and to celebrate women in business who are coming from Indigenous businesses and raising our knowledge around beautiful things like native foods and medicines and whatever you might be doing in your space. I'm Lyn Hawkins. I'm the founder and the National Director of Business Women Australia. I'm pretty much running the business again now with my marketing team. Really loving getting my hands back on the tools, and we're celebrating 10 years actually as a national community this year, and we'll be doing more surveys and trying to look at how to shape what our collective is looking for going forward. We have a business advisory board now, and they're incredible. They're from all around the different states, and they're really helping shape what it is that we're going to be looking like over the next 5 and 10 years. So we want your input. So, historically, we've focused on a lot of things around the business improvement, around the professional and personal growth piece, around leadership, around connecting, around raising the profile of women in leadership roles. As you know, we have this great view that it's really important that the wider community see women and know that we have specialist capabilities and talents. So influence and profile building has been very much at the core of what we're about. But what brings us together and what makes it so awesome is this incredible value connection and the authenticity that comes from that. We do a lot of courageous conversations. There's no fixing. We're all perfectly imperfect, but there's a lot of knowledge sharing. So if you're thinking about joining and you would like to be a part of what we're doing, reach out to me and talk to me about the different levels and how you could be potentially a partner or a sponsor. We have so much on. I think last year we ran 80 or 90 events. I think this year it's going to look like 120, including all our podcasts, our national online events, our local events that we do to support our leader members and our connector members to actually do their thing. So lots coming up. On the website is the calendar. I'm not going to go through all this, but I do want to highlight the leadership retreat coming up on the 7th to the 10th of August. We have a few rooms still to fill. I think this is old. There's definitely not 15 places available. I think there might be 5 or 6. So it's filling up, and we would love for you to join us. If you need a payment plan, just reach out. I'm very happy if you feel the calling to be there and to spend this time out to focus on self and to understand as leaders, it's not about the role, it's about how we show up in the world. It starts with understanding and being aware of self. We've got a very experiential program. It's development-based, it's evidence-based, and it brings through something very unique around contemporary human resources development practices in leadership, but also around the sacred sisterhood and the feminine and masculine energies. If Vita's online later on, we might actually get Vita to jump in and share a little bit about that retreat. So follow us on Facebook, and thank you so much to our partners and sponsors who help us do all the things that we do. Now, cybersecurity and safety is such an important topic. I, for one, have realized that I think I'm listening and learning all the time, but recently I paid an invoice to a tradie. I was in a rush. It was a $10,000 deposit on getting all our windows and sliding doors replaced in one of our investment properties in Perth. I'd been at a conference, someone was hassling me out to pay this invoice. He forwarded it on, it didn't attach. I sent back an email to him and to the tradie and said, hey, can you reattach that? I'll pay that deposit straight away. The invoice came to me. I paid it. A week later, we were chatting to Craig. He said, well, when are you going to pay that invoice, that deposit? I've ordered the stuff. I said, no, I paid that while I was away. And lo and behold, someone had intercepted that invoice somewhere between him sending it to me and me getting it. And changed the BSB and account numbers. That $10,000 is now being followed up as a dispute by my ANZ bank to Citibank. They said it can take more than 3 or 4 weeks to try and retrieve that funds. If we can't retrieve it, then we can go through legal proceedings with our friend Craig, which we obviously wouldn't do. Craig has come back and said his 12-year-old computer and the way that he was doing things was compromised. He had been malware. He's saying, it's his fault. We're saying, well, it's actually by law, our fault. And Caitriona can share that. So we're like friends trying to fight over who owes who $10,000, which is kind of a nice thing. We'll probably end up splitting it if we don't retrieve that 10 grand. He'll take a hit, we'll take a hit. But that isn't always the case, right? Kate, tell me about the legislation, because a lot of people can't believe that it's actually my fault paying the invoice and it was wrong when it was his computer that was compromised when I share this story.
Yeah. There's been a court case here in Western Australia, the first of its kind in the world, January of this year. And it was basically two companies. So Company A, Company B. Company A issued the invoice to Company B. Company A had been compromised. The managing director's email accounts had been compromised. Now, Company A had had several audits done and were told to improve their security, one being put on multi-factor authentication on your emails, but they ignored it. Company B received the invoice and did what they thought was the right thing, tried to phone Company A, couldn't get through on the phone, so then followed up with an email to the managing director of the company. The invoice was $235,000. Um, the invoice went to the hacker who had been in Company A's managing director's email accounts. The cybercriminal replied saying, "Yes, these are our bank account details," and they paid the $235,000 invoice. When they realised what had happened, they both went to court, and the court ruled that Company B didn't do enough to verify the bank account details, i.e., they didn't speak to somebody on the phone, so therefore they were liable and had to pay the money. So it's the first of its time. It was quite a big revelation in the cybersecurity world across the world, not just here in Australia. I had people in the UK going, "What the hell has just happened?" Because now you're saying companies, even if you don't have the proper security in place, you're not liable, which I can understand from both points of view. But it was a it was a very hard line for the judge to take, especially with the company being breached. I think it sent out the wrong message, to be honest. But again, should they have been able to phone them? Sometimes we can't get people on the phone. Sometimes we got project deadlines. Sometimes it's difficult. And as you said, you're being pressured under. And as I said to you earlier, you imagine that from a business context, and maybe a CEO or a CFO putting pressure on, a staff member to pay an invoice. When that pressure's come on, sometimes your controls that you have in place, they go by the wayside. You just do whatever it takes to get things done. And that's generally with business email compromise. That's why it's been so successful. And at the moment, it's probably one of the biggest scams that we are seeing impact businesses and individuals in Australia at the moment.
Yeah, so what obviously had happened with Craig is that because he didn't have his securities up to date, it was an old laptop. He'd obviously clicked on something that is compromised, and they're just waiting for that opportunity. The original invoice, obviously, Simon's high security company had blocked
Mm,
that email. They must have picked up something about that attachment. And inadvertently, I've emailed back, asked for it, and it's come through, my own. And I was just lucky I didn't end up paying more, because I got an email very quickly back the next day saying, look, I know this is unusual and against, and it was Craig's kind of wording. I know this is unusual and against our normal policy, because you'd agreed to have pay the rest on installation, but just to fast track and help things out with us, can you pay the full amount? So they were asking for another $20,000. And that was when I rang Simon and said, is Craig's business in trouble? Are we going to end up with losing 10 grand because he hasn't got the team to actually install our stuff? And so that, through the boys network, they're all ringing. They all thought that Craig's accountant was just being a bit weird, like a bit over diligent. And that, so right up until like 3 days later, we're still sort of trying to work out, why would the accountant do that? And then they were like, and then Craig was like, oh, there's
yeah,
something wrong. This hasn't actually come from us. And then we compared all everything was exactly the same, except they were just different numbers. And
yeah,
the other thing that was weird was they asked for a different account for the other amount to be put in. I said, oh, this is definitely
yeah,
a crime here.
yeah.
So a great lesson for everyone to learn by, you know.
Yeah, I had another a woman in business who the same thing happened to her, but what the hackers had done is they'd got into her mailbox and actually stopped the invoice in her mailbox. And they had edited the bank account details, but they'd also edited the message. And in the message, it said, sorry for the delay in getting the invoice. My lifelong friend has taken his own life, so I haven't been in the business. Once you pay the payment, I will get it was steel that they had ordered for a building. I will get steel. And she didn't want to ring up and ask, why have you changed your bank account details? No one, or just because he'd said that his friend had taken his own life. So they know how to play us. They know the emotions, the triggers, and that's what we need to look out for.
Look, so Australians lost 2.74 billion to scams in 2023 alone. Have we got any sort of more up to date? I mean, it must be, if it was in, that's 2 years ago now, it must
Yeah.
be it's probably in the tens of billions, because I think
Oh
it's
yeah.
skyrocketed like that.
It's 40, I think it's 43 or 46 billion last year that we lost to scams. Last year we were the sixth most hacked nation in the world. This year alone, so already in the first 5 months of the year, we're now up at number four, the fourth hacked nation in the world, which we just found out last week. And we are under attack. Last week I attended the Cyber West Summit here in Perth. A fantastic 2 days, but there was a very insightful presentation given by a guy called Brenton Dowling who came over from Canberra. He's a minister and he's one of the national coordinators for cybersecurity. And he actually scared most of us, even cybersecurity professionals, when he highlighted just how under attack we are and that we are nowhere near prepared with what is coming for us. Just not as individuals, but as a nation as well. So it's now become a national problem, not just an individual. But one of the things that he did highlight, and also there was Lieutenant Michelle McGuinness highlighted as well, is that because of all these massive data breaches that we're hearing on the news, every single week we hear of another company in Australia getting breached. The cyber criminals now have so much information about individuals that we're such an easy target. And that's why scams are at an all-time high, especially around investment scams. Coming up to this time of year, tax time scams have blown through the roof. Any accountant, any bookkeeper will tell you. If you haven't logged into your ATO account recently or your MyGov account, log in, make sure you've changed the password, because what they're doing is they're getting into people's ATO accounts and they're creating fake tax returns in your name, or they're editing and amending tax returns. So you can amend your tax return up to 5 years. And they're amending tax returns and claiming up to under $25,000 back on your tax, because they know that's the threshold before the ATO gets flagged. and we're seeing that a lot. And then the ATO are basically shutting down your account, and you can't do anything with your tax. Then until it gets resolved. And I've heard of people that's been locked out of their tax account for 2 to 3 years and can't do tax returns.
God blimey. I mean, you've been doing this kind of training now for how long? I mean, you're one of our leading educators in this space. You picked up very early this was going to be a big deal. And you've been obviously looking at all the different ways. I mean, you've been so passionate about looking after the small guy as well as working with the big corporates. What do you think it is that is making it so easy for us to be compromised?
Because we've become complacent. Tech has sort of come into our lives without many of us realizing. If you even look around your home, how many smart devices do you have in your home that you haven't even really become aware that they're a smart device? You think of things of like Siri, Alexa, you maybe have bought a washing machine now that connects to the Wi-Fi, your fridge connects to the Wi-Fi. Tech has basically evolved in a way and crept into our lives unbeknownst to us. Even think about how much personal data we give away. When you're signing up to online accounts, even now, noticed recently going into one of my favorite shops in Perth. I bought a dress, and no longer do they give physical receipts. They want to email you the receipt. You
Yeah.
know, this is more and more information that's going online about you that's building more of a case for cyber criminals. And unfortunately, companies aren't doing enough to protect our data. And I think as individuals, even when you remove the organizations, because it is the individuals that are getting more impacted, larger organizations do recover. You don't really hear too many of them going out of business. The smaller ones, obviously, it's a more severe impact. But as an individual, I've heard some horrendous stories. Like last year, just before Christmas, I run a workshop called Scams and Scones for retirees. And I heard a lady, she 83 years of age, she told me she let them onto her computer because she thought it was NBN that was fixing a problem on the internet. She said she had to go and cook the dinner, so she was left them on her computer. Off she went to the kitchen to cook her dinner and realized that they cleared out her husband's bank accounts, her super account, everything is gone. Everything. Because she said 2 hours she left them on her computer, and the banks have said 12 months ago it happened, and the banks can't get it back. She's lost absolutely everything. And the heartbreaking part of that story was she said to me, look, we can deal with it. We're 83, we've got our pension, the state pension. But she's like, my husband hasn't been the same with me since. He's blaming me for losing everything. We've worked all our lives for this, our life savings, and it's all gone because I was trusting. And this is somebody who lives in Joondalup, who's in our community. These are the stories that, we need to talk more about, because it's not going away. And in actual fact, with AI, it's actually going to become worse before it gets better. And I know I don't want to make it scary, but we need to waken up. We really do
We
need to
do.
waken
We
up.
need to waken up, and we need to realize too that it's not just vulnerable older people. And, I've had more than one person say to me, I wouldn't be telling everyone about that, Lyn. And I went, no, I'm telling everyone about that, because this is exactly what we need to be doing, is saying, even Lyn, who's a National Director of Business Women Australia and sits on these education programs all the time, has stuffed up.
Lynn, I interviewed a guy who's in cybersecurity and IT for 25 years. I would regard him as one of the most technical people I know, a really good software developer. He nearly lost all his cryptocurrency investment portfolio, and he came onto my podcast, West Coast Cyber, to talk about it last month. And he said if they can trick him, and he said he was one click away from and he what he's been doing is he's been using the offset of his mortgage to invest in crypto and other assets. And he said he was one click away of losing everything.
Oh God.
And that's somebody that works in cyber and IT.
I know. Well, look, financial independence is one of my big things, so it just makes me feel sick to the stomach
Mm.
that people are losing their financial independence, particularly if they've worked so hard through their lives through. I mean, even if you inherited it, it's pretty awful. Hey,
Yeah.
look, we do have some questions. For those of you who are online, if you've got a question, just put your hand up. I've got some questions that some of our members have asked. Vida, did you have a question you wanted to
Yeah,
kick off?
no, I just wanted to say, after having a conversation with you previously, Katrina, I have started the habit. I've got a like a daily expense count, and even payments I make through business online, I transfer the money into that account and only pay online now from this one account that never has much money in it.
Mm. Yeah.
So I just don't use my other accounts anymore after chatting to you.
I'm glad you've taken that on board, Vida, but that's a very good thing to do. You know, even if you're somebody in your personal life or your business that does a lot of stuff online, having an account or a credit card or whatever it is, it has a very small limit, and so that if they do get it, they're not going to get much. You know, to me, that's I do that as well in my own personal life. So I know that if they get into that account, yeah, I can live with what I've lost. And if you look at, even organizations and businesses, and individuals, look at what your risk appetite is. How much, are you comfortable with losing? And then you need to learn how to protect the rest. And that's the same with business. As a business risk, what is the big risk to your business, to your organization? Is it, Lynn, the amount that you lost? But think about if it was 10 times what you lost, how would you feel about that? And to be honest, knowing what you've lost and knowing what other businesses lose, most businesses do lose large amounts. It's not small amounts, but that's what we need to look at. If from an individual, would $1,000 impact my life, or is it $10,000, or is it $100,000? What's that cost or that limit? And then in your business, is it your reputational? If reputational and brand is huge for businesses, and you think about it, look at the brand damage that Optus has suffered because of their breach. Medibank, they talked about it. I was at the conference last week. They said that it hasn't finalized yet, but apparently the fine Medibank is going to get is trillions, trillions. Like that's huge. Do you know what I mean? And you have to think about that. Um, we haven't seen the ramifications yet come to businesses, but they're coming, and that was the glaring obvious what came from the government last week. We need to be prepared. If we look at the legislative changes that we have seen this year alone within cybersecurity, if you're a director or if you sit on a board, you need to waken up because you're going to be held liable and it's coming.
Yeah, absolutely. That is such an important reminder. Now, Kelly's actually just raised a really important thing. I mean, Kelly's obviously EOS IT providers. You're always providing technical solutions, aren't you, Kelly? But it's the people in the processes that you want to hear about, and for Kate to really raise, what are the things that, businesses need to be doing from
Yeah.
a people and process point of view, because it's not, once you've got all the technical side of things, it's a people problem, isn't it?
Well, last week at the summit, and I was at a breakfast yesterday with a cybersecurity community, and it's great to hear it that we are now talking about the human factors and the people side. But unfortunately, there's a thing that I call training fatigue in the industry, because organizations unfortunately have, for compliance reasons, they've had to give staff e-learning and more e-learning. And think about it, who enjoys doing e-learning? We don't. I had to do an induction not yesterday, the day before, to go on a mine site for one of my clients in the next few weeks. Half a day of the most boring induction I've ever had to do, but I had to do it, or I'm not allowed on the mine site. And I think it made me realize this is what we're doing to our people. We're giving them more and more content that doesn't engage them. We go next, next, next. You don't learn from it, and it doesn't actually make you change your behaviors. So from a people perspective, organizations, one of the big things, and I see it with the organizations that I work with and see the transformation, it's when your staff start to trust your cybersecurity and your IT team, because there can be a very big us versus them in organizations, because cyber and IT technical people sometimes not the best communicators, sometimes a little bit geeky. I know I spent 25 years there. Kelly will attest to this, who is non-technical herself and works in an IT company. We're working with people that don't communicate, but they're very good at what they do, and we need them to do the technical side. But generally they're not the best when it comes to the people side. So we need people within the organization that can have that, be that bridge between cyber and the rest of the business. And one of the big things is making it safe to speak up and say you've made a mistake. I cannot tell you how much transformation that can have within an organization. One of my clients is a mining company, well-known mining company here in Perth, and I've really struggled with their culture. It's been really hard. Every time we do a training, people turn their cameras off and they weren't engaging. And last October, their GM for their exploration team, she fell for a phishing email, and she actually entered her password, and she tried to hide it. She tried to deny it for 4 hours. But even though the cybersecurity team had knew that she'd done something, and because their systems were all flagging to say, a criminal was trying to get into her account. Eventually, after 4 hours, she admitted it. She said, "Yeah, I've messed up. I've given my password." And I then said, "Can I have a chat with her? Let me see why she tried to deny it." And she's like, "Well, we're going through redundancies at the moment. They're in a mining sector that's not doing very well." And she's like, "I felt like I was going to lose my job, so I was afraid to tell people that me, the GM, who's making people redundant, I fact up and I give cyber criminals my password." And she was brave enough to do a Teams interview with me and the rest of the organization and say, I done the wrong thing. You're not going to lose your job. In actual fact, you're going to keep the organization safe by speaking up and telling when you've made that mistake. And the transformation in that organization from she's done that has been huge. Absolutely huge. People are now coming and engaging with the cybersecurity team when they wouldn't have done before that. And that's what we need to see from a people perspective. It's get rid of the blame culture, because there's so much blame culture when it comes to cyber. And simulated phishing is one of those things that we use a lot, sending people out fake emails to see who will click. Again, it's creating an entrapment type culture where people feel that you're just trying to entrap them. We really need to move away from that. So and that's what I'm passionate about, is how do we help organizations create that trust, that safety first culture, just like the construction industry has done, our health and safety. Look at all those industries that have created that safety culture. We need to do the same. And one of the things that I am so passionate about, and I was very lucky last week to get time with Lieutenant General Michelle McGuinness to speak about this. I believe it's a life skill. It starts with the individual. It doesn't start in the workplace. And as a government and as a country, we need to help upskill all individuals where you come to work already skilled to keep yourself and the organization safe.
Yeah, that really does take a lot of personal responsibility, but I guess also thinking about, I mean, I know you do quite a bit of work with schools over the years too. How schools are actually, bringing it in, because it's not a unit in its own right, is it? It sort of goes across all the general studies. It's more around, how do we as educators and in education institutions ensure that our students are learning these life skills while they're at university
Yeah, it,
or
it
at
definitely
school.
should be part of the curriculum. There's no doubt about it. It should be part of the curriculum. But I have to say, like I do work, and maybe it's because some of the clients that are the schools that I work with are more private schools. But I did one recently. I done 3 days of workshops, and I was completely blown away by how advanced thinking that they are around their online safety. Um, we actually did run a simulated fish for the students, and we sent out one saying, your Snapchat account has been compromised. Click here to save your Snapchat account. And the amount of students that came and go, I knew that that wouldn't happen because I didn't register Snapchat with my school email address. The thinking that they have already, it's great. So I think, I feel hopeful that, as we go, the younger generation will be more safer. It's just, it's getting to that point, and we'll probably have about 20 hard years to do before we get to that point where it is a life skill, but we need to start somewhere. But they definitely, and again, it's a double-edged sword, because they're so familiar with technology now when they're younger, and they do take a little bit more risks. but I think they're more able to identify when they're questioning more. And I think that's the big part, is stopping and questioning and not just trusting everything that we see. And I
Yeah.
think that's what I see with the younger generation. They ask more questions and, try to verify. So they're more aware of, not everything online is real. And they're more aware of like deep fakes and AI and things that's happening like that, where the older generation just aren't aware.
So if we bring it back to some of the key things from a people and a process point of view that businesses can put in place, in the past you've said things like, the multi-factor security for passwords, changing your passwords regularly, password key, what do you call them? Pass change,
Paper,
kind of,
yeah.
yeah, those kind of things. What else is there that we need to be doing from a people and a process point of view, do you think, that are making the biggest differences that small businesses that time poor and resource poor can put in place?
Yeah, look, thankfully there's a lot of resources out there now for smaller businesses. Um, Here in WA, we have a program called Business Foundations that offer very subsidized workshops and training for small businesses. Some of it's basic, but it's a good start. They're also the government in joint venture with Commonwealth Bank created Cyber Wardens program. So it's a free online training, but again, it's basic and it's it's a start. But you know, it needs to be part of the conversation constantly. And I think that's the big bit for small business. I really feel for small businesses because I know a lot of them want to do it, but they can't afford to do it. And that's basically what I'm saying when I do work with small businesses. So, and you need to, when your business gets to a certain size, you need to be investing and working with an IT provider that knows what they're talking about and that are going to take that off you. Because, you know, you don't want that hanging over your head, or you don't want to have that as something that you're not aware of, because you know, you can easily go out of business with one cyber incident, and you may have worked 2, 3, 5, 10 years in your business to grow it, and just one incident, maybe paying a large business email compromise invoice, that's your business gone. So working with an IT provider, but if you don't have the budget or you don't have the money, start with the basics. There's loads of online content. Look at having regular training and conversations with your staff, but putting the basic stuff in place. Like, the government has come up with a campaign. It's called Act Now, Stay Safe or Stay Secure. And one of the big things, and they talked about it last week, they want every single Australian to do three things. And if every single Australian does these three things, then as a nation, we will be 80% more secure. It's having unique and strong passwords for every account. So not reusing your passwords, and having strong passwords for every account. Number two is having multi-factor authentication in all accounts. And number three is updating your devices. And that's what they said last week. Like, if that's not a massive mission and a massive goal for all of us, that if you look at your family, look at your employees, look at your circle, if you can get everybody to do those three things, then we'll be much more safe. And that's what we need to do, is help. Like, if your husband or your partner or your parents or your grandparents, if they can't do it, help them do it. Do you know what I mean? Take the time and do it. Because I think the big problem that we have in this space, people want to do it, but they're afraid to do it or don't know how to do it. So, like, going and setting up a password manager can feel very daunting to the individual, because what if you set up a password manager and you lose all your passwords? And that's what people think. What if I can't get into that password manager and now all my passwords are gone? Or I set up multi-factor authentication and now I can't get into my account. So people are afraid of the technology, but it's not as hard, and there's so many online resources. Gonna give a huge, huge tip, and I'm probably doing myself an injustice by doing this. ChatGPT is your best friend. Say if you use Gmail as an example and you want to set up multi-factor authentication on your Gmail, go to ChatGPT, say, give me step-by-step instructions to set up multi-factor authentication with an authenticator app on my Gmail account. It will walk you step by step. So look at those tools that are now free for us to use. and get them to help you set up the security in your business or your personal life. But you have to then get to a point where you say, okay, I'm not the professional in this. Like, I wouldn't think about doing my own accounts. I wouldn't think about doing, I say, Gemma, I do my own legal work. You know what I mean? Because I'm not a lawyer. Yes, I can use ChatGPT, but it's not going to do what Gemma can do or what a good accountant can do. So you need to get to the stage if you're in business where you say, I need to really invest in this. And unfortunately, a lot of business owners see this as a cost to business, but you shouldn't see it. If you have good security, and people trust that you know what you're doing, then you will actually, it's an advantage for your business. You will actually win more work. And if you look at, like, we've got this what you call Security of Critical Infrastructure Act in Australia. So there's 11 industries that are regarded as critical infrastructure. So you've got things like water, energy, Department of Defence, telecommunications. If you want to work with those industries, then you need to have your security in place or they won't work with you. And if you've had an incident, that's it, they won't work with you anymore. So, it's really, really important to look at those industries that maybe you're working with. And the other big thing that I say for businesses is look at who you do work with, because the cyber criminals might not target you, they might be targeting you to get to your clients. So if you're working with a large brand or say a critical infrastructure, Department of Defense or something like that, then they might be targeting you to get to your clients.
Absolutely. Now, with the you mentioned chat, and very interested to hear about the rise of AI enabled scams and deep fakes. I mean, this is sort of like the world of the future. The science fiction world is here now.
It's here now, yeah, yeah. Dr. Catherine Ball spoke at Cyber West last week. If you haven't come across her, follow her on LinkedIn. She's amazing. She's a futurist, and AI is like it's coming quicker than what we imagine. Like the next 5 years, we're not going to imagine the transformation that we have in our lives. But unfortunately, the cyber criminals are using it as well. So last year, the last 12 months, we've seen a 500% increase in phishing or fake emails that are AI generated. And AI generated emails are now 65% more successful than human generated. So the cyber criminals are using AI and they're more successful with using AI to generate fake and phishing emails. And that's why, when you said that, the one that you fell for, Lynn, most likely they have read his emails, taken a few of them out, put them into ChatGPT and said, write an email that will convince Lynn I'm X or I'm whoever. And that's what they do. And then we've got things like deep fakes and voice cloning. The voice cloning is here. It's already happening in our community. Last A few months ago, I think it was around about February, I was speaking at one of the schools. One of the teachers had told me that her son's a doctor here in Perth, and his mother-in-law is here on holidays. She's from Asia, so English is not her first language, but she got a phone call on her mobile, and it was his voice, so her son-in-law's voice, saying, "Can you come and meet me at the shopping centre in Balcata?" She rang her daughter in hysterics, going, "What's wrong with him? What's wrong with the husband?" I can't remember what his name was. He's got into some trouble and he needs me to meet him at Balcata. I don't know how to get to Balcata. So obviously the wife rang the husband, the doctor, to find out what was going on, and it wasn't. It was his voice had been cloned. And when the police investigated it, they said there's probably two things that they were trying to do. Either they might have abducted her and then held the doctor to ransom. He's a very high profile doctor here in Perth. He's on the news quite a lot. Or they might have been trying to get her out of the house so that they could rob it. So voice cloning, it's happening. Deep fakes, that's what the new issue. So we could be on a video call like this, and it may not be me. One of the presentations last week showed it, and I tested it myself. Literally 40 seconds, you can create a deep fake video of yourself, or of anybody. You can download the software, and it's pretty good. And like, if it's not perfect, but it's only going to keep getting better. So in the next few years, not even probably the next few months, we're going to see these deep fake videos that are going to be very hard to determine whether it's a real person or not.
So does that mean I'll be able to have like an avatar here and I'll be out fishing and you guys will be thinking that I'm chatting away to you and I'll just be having a la-di-da time in Mandurah?
Yeah, but
Oh, I like the sound of
we'll still know, Lynn. We'll still know.
that. But it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because organizations are looking at how do we take our chatbots to the next level so that people are having more of a human experience, with the interface of our customer services, and how can we look at saving, what we're doing by using these kind of tools. So
Yeah,
thinking of the opportunities of these things, there's the downside is that, the opportunists that are
yeah,
also thinking of the opportunities of these things as well.
yeah.
So, we're thinking about compliance, and what kind of compliance is going to be needed inside businesses.
Yeah, I'm
Because
just going to share
yeah,
my screen,
yeah,
Lynn. I just want to show some of the regulatory changes that we've had in the last year or so here in Australia. 'Cause I think it's important that we are aware the government is changing legislation, and there's been quite a lot of changes that we're not aware of. The Cybersecurity Act is one of the legislations that they're working on right now. And I highly recommend that you go to CyberCX's page to their blog, and they have quite a lot of details on the incoming regulations around cyber. But one of the ones that came into play last Friday just was the mandatory reporting of ransomware payments. So ransomware is when a cyber criminal downloads a virus called ransomware that spreads through the whole of your computer system in your business and then holds your business to ransomware. So that's what happened to likes of Optus, Medibank, all these larger breaches. And some companies do pay the ransom because it's easier then to get the encryption keys or decryption keys and get their data back because it's normally quicker. But now in Australia, for the first time ever, it's mandatory to report. So, if your business is turnover is over 3 million, then you now have to report, which is a big significant change for businesses because they never had to. The other one that came in, and I work with a lot of local governments around this, is there's new Privacy Act reforms here in WA. It's called PRIS, and it's the first time that local governments have had to report a data breach. Before in Western Australia, if government had a data breach, they didn't have to report it. The rest of us had to report, but government didn't. But this new legislation came in November, and it's still being rolled out, but it's definitely one that everybody needs to know about. And then we have a scam prevention bill that is coming in as well. There was one around smart devices and IoT devices and the security around it. So, these things are rapidly changing, and the government are bringing out more and more legislation to make us compliant. So we just need to be aware of it. But if you are like a small business, this is the big struggle for small businesses, and it was talked about a lot last week as well. A lot of the frameworks that we look at around risk and security for cybersecurity, they're not based or tailored towards a small business. So one that we have in Australia is called Essential 8, and it's got 8 security controls that you need to achieve to keep your business safe, and it goes from level 0 to level 3. They openly admitted it last week that small businesses can't achieve it. It's too hard, and they need reform. So it's really difficult to stay compliant, especially if you are a small business. Obviously, if you're in certain industries, like if you work with the Department of Defense, there's a regulation called DISP that you must achieve if you want to work with Department of Defense. Again, really difficult. Yeah, SMB 1001 is another one. Again, I don't do much around the compliance stuff anymore, Kelly, because it's just not my space. But there is a lot of changes coming, that businesses, especially if you're on the board, there's a lot of legislative changes. They haven't been put in place just yet, but it is definitely coming. But I feel for small businesses, especially if they are working with larger businesses, or especially things like Department of Defense or critical infrastructure companies, It's difficult for them to win those larger contracts if they don't have this compliance in place. But again, it's a double-edged sword. If we look at Europe, Europe has all this compliance in place, but we're still seeing huge breaches happening in Europe. Yes, it has made an impact and it is a safer nation because of it. But as they said last week, compliance is needed, but it's not the silver bullet. It won't fix everything that we need it to fix.
And Gemma, you've had a great experience just in terms of going through the processes with a business insurer. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I knew that I didn't ever have any business experience, so I kind of made sure I had a bit of a team around me. So I have a really lovely business insurance broker, and he sits down with you, and he went through it with me initially for like over an hour and explained all the different types of insurance you can get. And I was able to kind of specifically tell him where my risks were for the business, and like, you know, like we've just said, talk about the actual risk profile. So what is actually going to cripple the business versus what could you have appetite for? And then to kind of, because the lawyer in me, the bum cover then was to talk to the IT guy who had already set up all of this stuff. And I said, look, in order for me to get covered by this insurance, I need X, Y, and Z. And we worked through it all. And initially the setup took a few hours, but it's that peace of mind that came with it. And then every year when the insurance comes up for renewal, I have to check the policy's not changed and the requirements haven't changed. So it's a nice little annual reminder to do a bit of an IT health check. And as a lawyer, we sit and we have all these cybersecurity CPDs and everything that we do. And I save the PDFs, I save the slides, and I never do anything. And literally, whilst we've been on here, I'm on ChatGPT. I've uploaded them all to the chat. I've told it to draft a firm policy for me so I can do a staff training next week, because we do the double factor authentication. We do double check, you know, twice before we make any payment. But as the firm is going to grow, I need to make sure that is instilled in all of the staff members. So it's been, yeah, I've had a really good experience, but not everyone, I suppose, has got the time or the money to be like that proactive with it. But it didn't cost me anything with the insurance broker. And my IT guy, if anyone wants his details, is so beautiful and cheap. And he's not that expensive, and he just charges you for when he's tagged in.
Yeah.
So it's been great watching your journey, Gemma, you know, starting up as a sole practitioner and then growing and taking the time to set up your systems and your processes. And, you know, clearly as a lawyer, you're probably 10 steps ahead of the average punter who sets up their business because you understand the importance of all these things.
Plus, I think everyone's lying to me until proven otherwise.
Like, it's just such a great case study of checking in through each of the different milestones as you grow and evolve as a business owner. And as you've said, you know, when you're bringing in new people, having your policies, having your procedures, sticking with them, inducting them into the way that we do things here, because then, you know, those sort of safety checks don't get missed then by someone not knowing. So yeah, let's have a little talk about the security with ChatGPT and Copilot. I mean, there are free versions of these things around as well. You know, we've got different, lots of different versions of AI that people are using. Gemini is another one.
Yeah.
DeepSeek. You know, the women that I talk to around the nation have all got their favorites.
Yeah. It's a big problem, to be honest, for a lot of businesses. We call this shadow AI. So AI creeping into businesses without us even knowing that it's there. And I think what Kelly's alluding to is the difference between private versus public AI. And most people aren't aware of it. So basically, and it's been an age-old saying in cybersecurity, it's nothing new. But if the product's free, generally you're probably the product. You know, so be very, very careful when you're using these free tools. Generally, when you're using a free tool, their servers are hosted overseas, so they're not within Australia. If you work for not-for-profits, government agencies, places like that, you must keep your data within Australia. So the difference between Copilot and ChatGPT, Copilot is the Microsoft's AI and it's very, very similar to ChatGPT. It's very similar to Gemini. The only huge advantage is that it's if you use Office 365, it's kept within your tenant and your data is kept within Australia, and there is more security with it. Um, Personal preference, to be quite honest, I use a version of ChatGPT that I pay for, and I use Perplexity. I struggle a little bit with Copilot. I find when I put something into Copilot and I put it into the other apps, it doesn't give me the same. That's just my preference. But if I was running a large organization and wanted my team to use an AI model, it would be Copilot, without a doubt.
Yeah.
But you
With a
need,
paid version, getting your premium, go premium and have it secure.
yeah. Also, a rule of thumb, especially even if it is Copilot or ChatGPT, and even if it is the paid version, again, these are all online platforms and online systems. They're all relatively new. And just think about, they can't 100% provide security that your data is safe. So if just don't put any sensitive information that you wouldn't want in the public domain, and just think about it as from a data breach perspective as well. We don't know if these companies will in the future have a breach. We don't know what security implications they're going to have. So the best thing, it's like what I say to kids, don't send nudes if you don't want that nude to end up on a website. Don't be sending client data to these tools if you don't want that data to be ended up as part of a breach. So that's what I would say. Just be very, very careful what you share with these tools. One of the things that I do quite a lot, when I'm writing client reports, I anonymize the client. So I'll say company A and go through the data and take all my clients' data out that can identify the client and use the tools that way. Um, but it's definitely it's a big concern for organizations right now, especially the shadow AI and people not being fully aware that you can't just upload files and ask them to summarize. There was a case over in Victoria last year. It was a child protection caseworker uploaded all her case documents about a child sexual abuse case into ChatGPT. You can Google that case and find out all the child's information in ChatGPT, or you can enter, and find out the information. It's all there. And that's the problem with these AI tools. Once you put the information in, you can't get it back out again. You can't delete it.
And that's just extraordinary, isn't it? That we assume that people would understand that, like if you put something up in Wikipedia, it's there forever, even if someone changes it or overwrites it. It's
Yeah.
data that's out in the public domain.
Yeah. I think it's because, you know, people sometimes I see it in a lot of the corporates that I work in, they just treat it the same as like a search tool. And they think that, oh, you can clear your history, you can clear, and it's not there. But it's not a search tool. It's
No.
nowhere near a search tool. So, if you are using AI within your business or want to, I would definitely suggest upskilling your team in the safe use of AI before you roll it out. If you want to use Copilot, definitely work with a company that can help you roll it out safely. Because I've heard horror stories where company has turned on Copilot and next thing everybody can see the HR folder and has access to all the HR documents. Last thing you want to happen, So just be very, very, very careful when you're doing these things. But they're amazing. Like we have to embrace it. Don't be afraid of it one bit. Embrace it. Perplexity, if you haven't come across it, are a great tool for doing research. For my sins, I'm starting my PhD and going down that whole rabbit hole. So Perplexity is a fantastic research tool because it actually gives you the sources of where it finds its information from. Um, LinkedIn, if you had the paid version of LinkedIn, the LinkedIn Professional, they were given a year's free trial to Perplexity, to the professional version. I don't know if they're still doing it, but you go and check it out. I use a combination of them now. And yeah, I'm working on an app at the moment as well that will help the elderly with scams using AI as well.
In your spare time.
Caitriona, is the AI like ChatGPT coming to the point where they have to reference where they get the information from?
That is going to come, but it's not there yet, Vita. So you need to be very careful. There's a thing what you call hallucinations in AI. I'll get you a video and I'll put it in the link and you can watch it later. I use this when I'm training, especially corporates, on what hallucinations are. Let me see if I got it. But hallucinations, this video really describes why hallucinations are necessary in AI, but it's basically you just can't trust everything that comes out of the AI tool, and because it's not factual, and AI doesn't have the ability to critical think, so it can fabricate stuff. So a few months ago, I was working for a construction company, and I asked ChatGPT to give me 3 case studies of Australian construction companies that have had a cyber or a data breach, and it made 3 of them up. They were fabricated. They were all wrong. So that's why
Yeah.
Perplexity is a bit better, because Perplexity, it actually gives you the source of where it's found the information.
Because this is a bit of an issue that, in terms of defamation of character, Gemma, this would be an interesting one from a legal perspective. Is, how, have heard of instances where, you know, organisations and people are feeding chat with false information to derail, people and diminish trust in individuals and things like that. We saw that a little bit, I think, coming out of America during the elections as well. And it's a really interesting one because, again, it will just, there's no judgment obviously in chat around is this true or not true. This is just what's being fed into the information databases around these topics or people or names or what have you, and it just spits out what's been put in there.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the challenge that we have. I run this really cool game when I work with corporates around what's real and what's not, and it's just a series of AI generated images to help people start to think about what is real and what's not, and it blows my mind every time when I see people are so conflicted about what is real online and what's not. And that's the challenge that we have. We're living in an era now that you don't know what you're saying, if it is 100% right or not. So you have to fact check everything. And there is so much mis and disinformation out there. And that's just the future that we're in at the moment. I don't know if regulation changes are going to do anything about it, because the big tech companies are reluctant to change. We've seen, Meta in particular, some of the direction that they have taken. So we just need to be we have to be careful when we're online now. And I think it's difficult, especially for the older generation, because for them, they just think everything that they see online is real, and how could it not be real? And if you think about back, where did you used to get your news sources? It was from your local paper or the TV, but most of us go online now, and it's so easy to get news sources that are not real.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, maybe to wrap up, if you could give us the top 3 things that we can, as women in business, that we can keep ourselves and our businesses safe.
Yeah, look, I think those 3 things that the government are saying is definitely the top. First of all, that should be our goal. Everybody should be doing that, And if you are somebody that is reusing your passwords, please go and set up a password manager. It's the most easiest thing that you can do. It will look after your passwords for you, and it will change your life. I honestly do believe it will. The big thing about a password manager, as I've said before, is once you start using it, it will let you know when your password appears on a data breach. Without that, you don't know your password could be breached and it shouldn't. So passwords, setting up that second way of authenticating that it's you, and updating your devices. Other than that, it's don't be afraid to go to security events. Last week, Mary Gooch, who's one of our wonderful members, came to Cyber West Summit with me for the 2 days. And that's what she said. She's like, she called you out, Lynn. She's like, Lynn should be here. And you need to go to cyber events. Don't be afraid of them. And
Yeah.
we need to empower ourselves to upskill ourselves in this space. If we want to be more present online, build a business online, which we have to, then empower yourself to be more safe and learn more about it. it's not as scary as what you think. And find those communities that are not full of the tech bros. There is loads of them out there. Cyber West in particular have a great diversity achieved within their community. And that's one of the things that was very much noted last week, that there's more females in the room, which was amazing. The two keynote speakers were females as well, which is amazing. So get those communities where you can learn, but you need to stay up to date. It's changing rapidly right now, especially when it comes to legislation, especially when it comes to the new ways that cyber criminals are targeting us. ID Care is a really good not-for-profit here in Australia. Everybody should be following them on LinkedIn and Facebook, because they're constantly giving updates of the new types of scams that we're seeing. I seen one a few weeks ago where they're seeing a lot of SIM swapping. So the cyber criminals are phoning up the telecommunication companies saying, I've lost my SIM. Can you transfer my number to a different SIM? So, plug into those networks that are going to keep you up to date with
What was
those
that?
scams.
Sorry, Caitriona, but what was
I
the name you said to follow?
ID Care. I'll put it into the chat, Vita.
Right,
The Irish
thanks.
accent's getting me.
There's so much we can do. To add into that too, I just think it's not a bad thing to think like Gemma. Think like a lawyer and just imagine that every source is trying to tell you a lie or do the wrong thing. Sorry, Gemma. She's obviously reading something else, otherwise she'd be laughing. And I think the other thing is too, if you're going to pay someone, pick up the phone and ring, double check, is this the same BSB or the account number that you had intended me to pay, especially if it's the first time. If there's someone who's changed their account details, ring them up and say, have you really changed your account details, or is this just someone? They're really important things that are obviously costing a lot of organizations. Stick with the process, ring them up, pick up the phone, have a chat. And if they're not available that day because they're burying someone who's, passed for whatever reason, ring them tomorrow and pay them a day late.
And that's the thing, I think you'd be better asking for forgiveness than, having to go through the whole blame culture. 100%, Gemma, having to go through that situation. You think about this from, obviously you have a strong relationship, Lynn, with your tradie. But if this was a business relationship and maybe it's taken you years to build this relationship, because of that one invoice mispaid, that breaks that relationship. You're not going to probably do work again together. And I see that's one of the big challenges with business email compromise. The relationship breaks down, the blame culture starts, and you can lose those relationships that you've worked really hard to build.
Yeah, well, it's been incredible. Our experience, Craig's now got the latest technology. He's got the latest. He's learnt something new. He's thankful that it was with us in a smaller job than rather a massive sort of project that he's been involved with. And we've seen it as a real lesson for us as a family and in our own businesses, and a reminder in Simon's businesses, too, with his, sharing this example of sticking with the process. This is it was one of the times I didn't ring up.
Yeah.
And it was the time that I should have. So there you go. Thank you so much, Caitriona. The opportunity to be able to pick your brain is always so worth its while for us. So we really appreciate your generosity, the knowledge that you share with us, always something new that we learn. If you do have a checklist or anything like that, send it through to me and we'll sit that up on our Insights article and attribute that and send that out along with the link to this, and try and raise awareness around what people need to be doing. Such practical ideas that are very simple and not scary to put in place that each one of us can do. So thank you so much. And thank you, ladies, for those of you who did carve out time in your busy days. Any final words, Caitriona, before I head over to Vita, who might just talk a little bit about the retreat while we've got the opportunity?
Yeah, no, just take action. Even if you've learned something new, if you walk away and don't action it, then you're no safer. So even if it's just going and changing that one password, protecting those important accounts or telling your story, just take action is the big thing. And that's the message from the government. We need to act now, not 6 months time, not next week. It's now. So just take action.
Yeah, that idea of the smaller account and a smaller Visa card limit, 2 really great ideas there. I'm going to be implementing as well. I've got yeah. I want to get off this now and do that. But Vida, how
Great.
about our
Thank
leadership
you,
retreat? We've still got
Thank
some
you,
great
Caitriona.
things.
Well,
Thank you
I'm
so
really
much.
excited about the Bali retreat. It's we put a lot of effort into it and a lot of planning, and really it's a huge awakening. We have 4 main pillars. We're taking a very holistic approach, working with the whole woman. We're aligning our masculine and feminine qualities, not picking one side over the other, but utilizing all of our qualities that we have. We do a lot on aligning our mental, our emotional, our physical, and our intuitive intelligences. The weekend is totally experiential. It's like an explosion of self-awareness. You know, a lot of leaderships miss that important quality of self-awareness. Like you can be an inspirational leader, you can be a transformational leader, and be true to yourself. But you can be a toxic leader and you can be a control freak leader and still be true to yourself, still be authentic. It's self-awareness that makes the difference. The way being able to really understand who you are, what your triggers are, what your biases are, how you interact with others, and being able to see how others perceive you is the glue that makes leadership really, truly genuine and authentic and heart-led leadership. So we've got a lot of amazing things happening this week. And it's also a lot about too, reclaiming yourself, you know, like reclaiming the bits of yourself that have maybe got a little dull or diminished or been hidden or even never, ever come to the surface before. So we're doing a beautiful dive from the inside out to discover our full leadership potential as women in this modern world. It's
going to be an extraordinary experience. So it'll be the Thursday night we arrive. We spend 2 very full, deep days in an experiential learning environment. It's bringing in contemporary HR and leadership development practices along with the very conscious and unique approach to development and self-awareness and self-leadership that Vida has been really quite a global leader in, and we've been really refining that over the 10 years working with Vida through Business Women Australia. So what we have created for this opportunity, I think, is unique. It's a world first, and it's extraordinary. We've got the Blue Karma Resort entirely booked out for 20 of us. And so we're really, if you're feeling a calling and you're listening to our recording or you're on the call today, if you're feeling a calling to be there and you know, really invest in everything it takes to lead self in order to lead others, this is for you. We also talked a little bit earlier about leadership. You know, it's not a position, it's not a title, it's a way of being. And I've got some of our younger members that have been chatting to me about that. You know, they're not in leadership roles yet, but they're feeling a calling to be there as well. And it's a really interesting thing because I think, Vida, you said the other day to me something that really hit home. You said the word leadership is so loaded, and it's a real problem word because leadership is not about just being the boss.
It's not a role. It's, as you said, it's a way of being. And it's not like when you go home, you have a different leadership style, or when you go to work, you go a different leadership style, or when you're hanging out with your girlfriends. It's still the same leader. It's still the same person. You may use different qualities of that style, but you're always the same person. Leadership's not something you put on and take off. And there's a lot, it's loaded.
There's a lot in that. And look, if you're interested in the detailed program, reach out to me or Vida. We've got it broken down into the days and what each of the days are going to have, and the sort of impact that you're likely to get from this investment in yourself. So, or reach out to either of us for a chat. So thanks a lot, everyone. We're finishing on time. That's beautiful. Thanks for being here, and we will see you at our next either online or in-person event. Thank you so much, Caitriona, for everything. Thank you, Vida, for sharing that too.